Welcome to Feel Safe in Your Body. I'm Victor Goenka. My guest today comes from the startup world, a writer, a builder, a developer, and coach. And in his own words, a terribly neurotic, depressed, and compulsive person for most of his life, with addiction from a young age and a nervous system locked in fight or flight. Here's the frame he brought me, and is the reason this episode exists. Addiction as survival. Performance as worth. The idea that the compulsive behavior and the overachieving were never two different problems. They were the same nervous system running the same program. And we go after a question I care about a lot: what real integration looks like versus the fantasy of being fully healed. One arc, like always, where he started, what wired him, what turned it, and what safety looks like now. Let's go. Welcome, Mac. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for that introduction. Hit it right on the head. So it's perfect.
My pleasure. Thank you. You used three words about your former self: neurotic, depressed, compulsive. Before any vocabulary, before any healing, what did it feel like to live inside that system day to day?
Yeah, I think it was when I use those three words, that was just my way to describe how I really try to regulate my internal states that I didn't know how to regulate on my own, right? So lots of ruminating thoughts and just compulsive thinking, but also compulsive like addictions around sexuality and substances, and really just trying to find any way I could to dissociate from my inner state, but also the things happening around me in my home as well. And so to me, I would describe it as a place of kind of inner chaos where I could present one front of being very well put together and very calm and steady, but the internal state was a totally different story. So that's kind of that split life that I really lived for a long time on that front. Yeah.
It feels like it's two very active personalities, one for the public and one with your true self in front of the mirror, and trying to balance those two identities, both serving you positively and both serving you, I guess, negatively at the same time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it took a lot of vitality to use to have to do that, so.
When did the addiction start doing its job? What was it handling for you that nothing else could?
The addiction really set in around 13 years old. What it was handling for me, it was almost like this release valve, right? Because I would be this person in my home. I'm the oldest of 6 kids and a really chaotic household, a very religious household as well. And, it seemed that most people, my parents and my siblings, couldn't really regulate themselves. So I basically took it upon myself to regulate everyone else, because I felt like if I could stabilize the home, and especially my mother, then that would create more safety and more connection for me. But it was an impossible responsibility to take on as a young kid. And so then eventually the addiction came in as a way to just blow off steam and really regulate myself and reset my nervous system from really trying to carry all that emotional load in the home.
Wow. Let's take your own frame seriously. Addiction as survival, right?
Yeah.
Walk me through it. What was your nervous system actually trying to solve? What were you numbing? What were you running from? Or what was that place of safety that you were seeking?
Yeah, I think that the addiction, and for me, it can be, that type of addiction there. And what it was really trying to do, like I was looking for nurturing that I wasn't getting outside of myself. So it was actually the physical touch and the pleasure that comes with that I felt that those needs of being nurtured by somebody else in a very healthy way didn't seem to be there. It felt like I was kind of alone and managing my internal states, and, not having somebody there to help me co-regulate. Because as we know, it's like when you're a young child, you don't know how to regulate somebody else unless somebody else shows you the way and helps you co-regulate. So then you learn how to get to that point. So for me, it was this method of regulation, trying to nurture myself and reset this really just this nervous system, this body that was really that state down, if I had to describe it from that point.
And the second half of your frame, performance as worth, tied to survival too, right? Same wiring, different costume.
Yeah.
How did that show up in your work life, in your startup?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it started around academics and athletics first. That was like, if I could perform and show my worth externally, then somehow it would fulfill this internal sense of worth. And then eventually that transitioned to a career in sales. So I'm not actually a founder, but I've been working in startups from the business development and the sales perspective for the last 10 years or so. And for me, it was like hit the quota, make the commissions, make sure that I'm, top of my team and being a very star performer in the company. And then I always thought that would bring me some type of internal peace, but it was more like this compulsive thing of needing to always be on and be performing in order to feel like I'm at baseline, right? Because I always lived up here from a sympathetic state. And so the startup world just kept that chaos kind of there all the time and helped me stay almost addicted to this place of staying really upregulated and performing all the time in order to feel normal, even though I desperately wanted to downregulate and come back to my body and be able to relax and release from, into my career.
And the idea to always perform. Right?
Yeah.
Did the world reward you with that wiring? Is that part of why it took so long to see it?
Well, I mean, no, the performance never fulfilled those internal states that I was trying to get to, right? So it took me a long time to see it because mainly the performance was a survival mechanism first from like a financial and like a root stability place, right? Like I was like, I have to perform to survive and not be in the same financial situations that my parents were in that I grew up in, right? So that was a big driver of not feeling secure from the basic needs perspective as a young child and throughout, growing up. And so that turned in, where can I go make the most money and make sure that I don't ever go back into that. But even didn't matter how many commissions and how many sales and how many deals I was doing, the internal wiring never was rewired because it was still a survival mechanism, even though I wasn't truly living in a physical survival state anymore. Right. So it took me a long time to realize that because I had to come to the place within myself to be like, oh, you have to fulfill these internal things for yourself and validate your own worth external of any results that you put out to the world. And that's still a slow rewiring process, right? I think it's not something that's fully complete all the time. I think, especially in the age of social media, we all reach for some forms of external validation, and it's definitely something that drives these masks that we wear. So it's never a complete process. I think you unpeel the layers a little bit at a time and finally be able to come back to yourself enough to really have a better perspective on things,
Been looking at it as a whole, or rather as an observer, than attaching yourself to becoming to that defining your identity.
Yeah, exactly. And then the results came is when you release the need to identify them, that's when everything else just takes care of itself and you don't have to be so attached to the outcome. So I agree. You said it perfectly. Yeah.
Breathwork and somatic work are your pillars, right? In your own words. Take me to the first time breath actually did something. Not the practice you have now, but the first crack in the wall.
The first crack in the wall, I would have these moments even throughout my childhood that would be these really spontaneous moments where I would somehow get connected so deeply to my breath that I go into these really deep, still places and very deep, deep, deep breath. And it wasn't something that I was consciously doing. I would find that there would be times when I'd have a moment of quiet or by myself, or even times when I needed to escape the chaos of the household. I would find myself almost automatically returning to this like deep belly breathing that nobody ever taught me, but it would just pop up spontaneously. So that would happen like, a little bit at a time. And then I started becoming more conscious of it. But when I got into my 20s and I started getting into mindfulness and yoga and pranayama is when I really started developing that. But it was more of a spontaneous thing before that, throughout my childhood and growing up. Yeah.
Have you had any experience with the Wim Hof method and some holotropic breath and ice?
Yeah, so I did. I wouldn't say I'm I've done like surface level Wim Hof stuff within cold showers and ice baths too. Now, I never went as deep into practice as I would like to, but there was probably a period of probably a good 6 months in my first couple of years, in like my sophomore year of college, where I was doing a lot of holotropic style Wim Hof methods, directly like how he teaches it, which I understand he's your mentor in some ways, correct?
Because it is addictive.
It is.
Yeah.
I think even you can get addicted to the states where the breath work takes you to, just like any other drug. Now, it's a better method than cannabis, and I have the same relationship with cannabis. It is a true love in my life, and also something that's been I've abused in certain ways. And so I've really come out of like probably in the last year out of like 7 years of really deep cannabis addiction and transforming my relationship with it completely through breath as well. And it started actually combining breath work with cannabis. So I would sit and say, okay, if I'm actually going to get high today, I'm going to sit in meditation and I'm going to follow my breath. I'm going to use the medicine, cannabis, like a psychedelic, possible, in that same way. And so I started combining cannabis and breath work, but then I started realizing, well, I can get to these similar states without the medicine as well. And so then it turned into, I still might imbibe and have cannabis every once in a while, but it's a very much a ceremonial and a ritual thing that I do combined with breath instead of a daily trying to numb my states out. And then I'm able to tune more into my body, especially somatically. I think it's a beautiful medicine for that, cannabis is, if you approach it with the breath and the right intention, right? Because otherwise you go into the dissociation on that front. So that's been my experience as well.
We'll come to well, not all of us, but hopefully most of us come to this moment at one part in our life, because numbing it, either be it alcohol or cannabis, because that's what's widely accepted today, or some kind of form of prescription to not allow us to feel finally. And not being able to feel is the main culprit for not being able to think for yourself eventually. And then you are becoming how some people call it, this NPC, right? You're this non-playable character, numbing yourself constantly rather than using this beautiful gift of a body of the exploration to expand and put all these beauties into your perspective, taste, travel, and enjoying all of that under the pretense of I need to get high, and I cannot enjoy my travel experience without actually getting high. So are you living for yourself? Are you living for the energy of that plant?
Yes. Right. And it's like you start to do where you can't do anything unless you interact with the plant first, right? And so, and it's kind of like this accepted thing within cannabis culture. Like it's like, get high, go do whatever you want. It makes everything better. But after a while, you realize how much of your own intuition and your own like faculties, especially with like how I could think it. And, so after a while, it's like, the addiction serves a purpose up to a point. There's some need it was meeting, but eventually the costs start to outweigh the benefits. And that's when you really have to take a look at it and then decide, how am I going to transform this relationship with it? Otherwise, it's going to continue to drive all the emotional things and things you're avoiding deeper into your system. I mean, not. I think there's so many socially acceptable addictions. Like look at just like caffeine use, right? Like people don't realize how truly dependent and addicted through cycles with caffeine too. So I'm at least I'm aware of it. But there's so many things that are socially acceptable on that front that people wouldn't call addiction. But when you truly zoom out and take a look at like, can you really go without something for an extended period of time without it totally like destroying you, right? And it's like, how many of us have so many crutches that uphold us, when I think the most fundamental thing for personal growth is daily spiritual practice, whatever that means for you. But for me, it is connection to the breath. Sit down, whether it's box breathing, whether it's some type of yogic pranayama, whether it is just like intuitive breath that just you let the breath breathe you. Eventually you get to that point where you can allow the breath just to do its thing without you having to do and have a technique that you're doing, right? So I'm curious if you've come to that place as well.
Yeah, allowing the breath to breathe you is magical.
Yeah.
Allow the breath to breathe you. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Your third topic is the one I want to slow down on: how direct nervous system work creates more choice over addictive behavior. Walk me through the mechanics as you've lived them. Where exactly does the choice show up?
Yeah, good question. It took me a long time to get to a place where there was a choice, I would say. Most of the time I would say that with addiction, like we feel like we don't have a choice first. So it's like the identity of being like, well, I have no choice. I have to have it. Right. So that's like the first thing of becoming aware of, like, what are your triggers that can cause you to want to have something, right? And I think just recognizing that it is an addiction in the first place, because you mentioned some people don't even realize they're in it. Once you recognize you have an addiction, that's when the choice can come into play and the free will comes in. For me, I would say the direct nervous system work has come through the breath. It's come through methods like Qigong as well, and yoga, like yoga asana, but also like my feet on the earth, time in nature, like all those things really regulate your nervous system, as well as what your diet look like, what your hydration look like. Like if you're putting things into your body that are inflamed, sometimes it's like, could be emotional, but it could be a physical thing that's driving the addiction because you just need a relief from the pain or the discomfort. And so I think for me to find the choice in the addiction, what I started doing is like making a rule for myself. Okay, if I want cannabis or something else, and it used to be alcohol for me too. Pornography has been a big one as well. It's like, okay, if I want these things, one, have I done my breath work today or sat in meditation or done something that works on the nervous system? And even if I engaged the behavior after that, didn't matter. What I wanted was just at least a short time window where I paused and did something that was beneficial for myself before I would engage with the addiction. And so I think if you conscious practice to like sit down and say, okay, I have an impulse that I need to consume something. Okay, well, let's actually track it in my body. Where is this? Like usually there's a physical sensation somewhere that's pulling at you from the body first before the mind even recognizes it. So a lot of times it's like track that sensation. Now let's send some breath to the place where you're feeling the sensation. Sit there, feel into it, breathe with it. And then if you still need the addiction after that, great, go engage it. But at least you stopped and paused and long about it, and how I've really tried to develop that with myself. Yeah.
I love that, because you can lie to the whole world, but you cannot lie to yourself, right?
Yeah.
And eventually you come to the point where how long can you bullshit your own identity? And once you're tired of that, I guess that's when you sometimes come to breathwork finally.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
What does the urge feel like now when it visits? What do you do in the first 10 seconds?
Yeah, when the urge visits now, doesn't matter what it is, because like I said, I think these patterns will probably always live in you in some way. Eventually you'll get to a place where you can just let it rise like a wave and fall away again, right? For me, it's always some sensation, and usually in my gut, that's where I have a lot of discomfort, or that's like the seat of where you feel certain things in sacral areas, that's where sensation starts. So for me, it's just like first recognizing what is the physical sensation, and then trying to identify how that's playing into what my thoughts are reaching for at that point. Because you may say, yes, I need cannabis, but now it's like, well, do I need cannabis, or am I just so tired and overworked that I actually need to go take a nap instead? Or do I need to just go do some breath work, or do I need to go ground outside and release this energy that is pent up over the workday, right? So that's kind of my process now. It's like, what else could replace the behavior first? And then if you go do all those things and you've come to a place where maybe you do need cannabis that day, because it could be helpful now on that front. It's like the urges will still come up, but it's like, what else can I do that actually is an internal resourcing versus external resourcing on that front? Yeah.
I love that. For a signature question that I ask everybody who I speak to, how do you know in your body that you're safe right now?
I think it comes back to breath to begin with. Is your breath shallow? Is it short? Is it stuck up here in your throat and your chest? Or can you actually send it deep into your gut and breathe deeply into your diaphragm? Like for me, that's it. It's like, can I sit still and can I breathe deeply? That's how I know I'm safe. Because otherwise, if I'm fidgety and the breath's shallow and I have a hard time getting those deep breaths, that's how I know like I'm activated in some way.
And in regards to the constant fight or flight, you added that it still is present within you at multiple times. That little phrase is your whole integration, right? Versus healed argument.
Yeah.
So make the case. What's wrong with the idea of being fully healed?
I think the idea of being fully healed is like there was something that needed to be fixed, that there was something broken within yourself, right? And healing needs to take place, but this final destination of healed, where you're no longer ever going to be like have any negative emotions or negative patterns or self behaviors, is probably not realistic, right? And I think that's where, if we think we can finally become fully healed, but we never get to that point, it brings a lot of shame. And I think shame is a big piece with addiction that keeps you from actually healing it, because the shame cycle keeps you stuck in the addictive pattern, because like you engage with something, the shame comes in and you don't know what to do with it, and then it eventually, like, the charge of the shame emotion builds up again, that you need something to release that valve again, then you go back to the addiction to numb it out. So for me, it's like, you're not trying to get to a healed place, you're trying to get to a place where you've integrated the behavior, being like, look, it's here, it's coming up, I know I'm feeling activated right now, but I don't actually have to engage with it. And I think that's truly what integration is versus healing, is that you're going to have the urges, you're going to have the compulsion that pulls at you sometimes, especially if you have a long history of addiction. For sure, the integration is just being able to, like, how I like to think about it, keep the shadow close, but not indulge in its energy itself or the patterns of the shadow. It's like you make friends with it, you recognize it, you see it, you fully sit with it, but you are able to just hold integration is, if that answers your question.
Yeah, where's the line between integration and settling?
And settling? That's a good question. I don't know. I think that's something that I'm still fully figuring out, right? Like, I think it's a lifelong process of individuation, right? Like Jung would say, like, it's a lifelong thing of coming back to yourself. I think, do you have more vitality, and do you have more creativity, and do you have a better direction where you can see a brighter future, is when you know you're not just settling, but you're to share outwardly, right? Is how I think about that. Because if you're just settling and staying complacent, then you're probably not creating much. You're not bringing real value to the world or to yourself. And so there's a difference between, like, what do I have to share, for example, is how I might think about that.
Yeah, I resonate with that. I'm about on the same line with, and it comes back again about being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
You can integrate forever. You can also settle forever.
Yeah.
But as long as you find the magic bridge, the golden bridge between those two, and begin acting on your decisions and taking very serious decisions with yourself, and not going back on the decisions you make, that builds up that spine for going from settling to integrating.
Yeah. I mean, I think the internal integrity is a very hard thing to find, where you're so integrous with yourself. So I agree 100%. Yeah.
What did you have to grieve about in the healed fantasy? What did letting it go give you back?
Good question. You know, I think it's like this someplace, like, especially if you get into spiritual thought, it's like some traditions and teachers and things teach this place of enlightenment, right? And so when you picture being healed in this place of enlightenment, it's like you live in this bliss state, you live in this place of complete contentment. And I think that's what people think means. But releasing that means, well, you have to grieve that, because you have to realize, to be a fully integrated human, you're going to go from the joy to the sorrow. You have to feel the happiness and the grief at equal depth, and be able to hold both, all ends of the polarities, with the same amount of reverence as you hold just the positive, right? And so you have to release and grieve this notion that you're never going to have any negative emotions or things that are difficult to deal with. But the beauty is actually going into the grief, going into the anger, and finding the healthy aspects of it, of what, like that, where your power lives in that. Because I think addiction especially keeps us from going into the harder emotions, where there's a lot of pent up vitality, and this notion of some nirvana place you're going to get to. Yeah.
It's a hard question. It's a hard question, because it first has to come from a base of integrity with yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
If there's a listener right now who is successful, compulsive, and exhausted, and tonight has the urge going that will show up like it always does, using what you know about breath and that window of choice, what do they actually do in those 10 seconds?
In those 10 seconds, go find somewhere to sit that's quiet. Don't run away from the emotion or the compulsion, but go sit with it and then just do a simple box breath, whether it's 4-4-4 or you want to do a like 4-6-8 breath, something that just gets you in tune with the full cycle of the breath, allows you to pause, and then you'll find that the choice window starts to get wider and wider after a time if you really practice that. And so that's my best advice is like stop there. So
I absolutely resonate with that. Box breathing works.
Mhm.
Any kind of rhythmic breathing where you can find that your awareness and your attention brings full, undivided clarity on that inhale and the exhale,
Yep.
and that those overthinking thoughts, that anxiety can just lower down because, as we know, wherever your attention goes, that's where your energy flows.
Yep.
So if you focus on those 3 seconds in, 3 seconds hold, 4 seconds exhale, whatever it is for you in that moment, you can disconnect from those compulsive thoughts in that moment.
Mhm. Yep.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
And the biggest first step for the one who's never told anyone about the compulsive side, what opened the door for you?
Mhm. What opened the door for me was enough pain and enough suffering by myself that I did not want to be lonely anymore. So it took a lot of years. And I would say what opened the door was finding integrity within myself that I could no longer stand who I was at that point. And so that's what opened the door. It was like you almost have to be humbled fully and maybe hit rock bottom. That looks different for everyone. But for me, it was like I had to learn the hard way and then realize I can't do it alone because that's what I've been trying to do my whole life and nothing's changed. So it was kind of just a series of mini revelations and then also some big psychedelic experiences as well, which we don't need to get into today, that really brought some gravity to the situation, brought me to a place of just vulnerability and humility that I needed to ask for help. And so I would say just like loneliness and the pain were the good 100%. Yep, exactly.
Where can people find you, reconnect, or connect with you further?
Yeah. Well, you can find me on Instagram and Threads at McKayan888. So McKayan 888 on Instagram and Threads. On both of those, you'll have links to my Substack pages. I have one combined writing project that's all around eros, desire, sexual compulsion, where I have a friend and a PhD that have a combined project there called Living Eros. So you can find Living Eros linked on both my Instagram and Threads, and find us on Substack. And then I have my personal Substack as well, where I write about a lot of things: addiction, psychedelic experiences, religious deconstruction, a lot of different topics that are near and dear to my heart. So right now it's a lot of writing and a lot of on Instagram and Threads and Substack, but I am developing coaching offers as well that I plan to step into in the next few months, of working with people one-on-one around addiction using somatic methods like IFS and somatic experiencing, breath work, and a lot more coming. So that's coming here soon, but right now the writing's where you can find me the most. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I will link. People will be able to reach out and find you through these methods. For me, if your mind is loud and your body never quite settles, that's the work I do inside BreathX Collective on nas.com. So you can also find that community linked in the show notes. And this was Feel Safe in Your Body. I'm Victor Goenka. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being here.